Welcome to the Wave Women Veteran Entrepreneurs Podcast, a network for building capacity. And this is powered by Truist Bank. My name is Omar Mohammed, helping you improve and progress in business and in life. And my co-host over there is
Major General Linda Singh. I'm retired and I'm also the owner and founder of Kaleidoscope Effect.
all right, good deal. So we're going to let you know who we are. This is the first of the Wave podcast and how we got here. So EDAC has been around since 1992. I've been on board since 2003. I was actually a student when it actually came on board back in 1992. Now I am I'm a resource. I hate to say I'm the director, but the director of the center. So we've worked with women-owned businesses since 2003, providing a conference, one-on-one business counseling, access to capital as well. We also been working with veterans. So now we kind of put the two together, women and veterans, and now we have this initiative. It's actually called the Women Platform, and we love acronyms. So Women stands for Women Owned and Managed Enterprise Network. So we have this platform. Truist came to us and are supporting us throughout this. Next time we come on, you'll hear more about in detail on what we're gonna do with the women platform. But for now, you want to hear from the host. We're gonna do 12 of these over the next couple of months. So my story is born and raised in Baltimore. Both of my parents were entrepreneurs. Actually, Morgan was the only school I wanted to go to. I got into Morgan, graduated with a degree in accounting, and ever since been working in accounting, managing a loan fund, and just supporting entrepreneurs. I've had some businesses that were successful, and some businesses that I said, why did I get involved with these business partners? So I got some stories to tell about business partners and understanding the industry that you're going into, using your own money and they not using their own money. So yeah, I got some more stories to tell on that. So we've been doing this for a number of years, and now we have this initiative, this podcast where we're going to bring on women veteran entrepreneurs of color to share their story. How did they get started in entrepreneurship? Did the military assist them with that? Where are they operating now? Are they doing government contracting? Because not all veterans are doing government contracting, but are they interested in getting in government contracting? So we'll have some entrepreneurs to talk about that. And then we'll have another segment called resources, where we'll bring on a resource to provide some additional resources to help you build capacity. So with that said, enough about me, because it's not about me. As you can see, I'm not a woman. I'm the host. But Major General Linda Singh is a woman, a veteran, and woman of color, and we're gonna learn more about who she is. So first of all, what branch of the military did you serve in? First of all, do you have any questions for me before I'm about to jump right into it?
I don't, even though I'm sure that I will ask you some questions along the way because I'm finding your journey at Morgan to be, one that's kind of, you know, I want to say it's moved right in your focus, but this whole thing with entrepreneurs, and so it's going to be very interesting to really explore how you got into that and what intrigued you, because it may be a little bit of what's kind of driven me as well.
All right, good deal. Well, looking forward to it. All right, so what branch of the military did you serve in?
I served in the Army, and most people don't realize that the Army National Guard, I joined the Army National Guard at age 17. And people don't understand that the National Guard is part of the Army and it's part of the Air Force. So there's the Army National Guard, there's the Air Force National Guard. We also have the Army Reserve and the Air Force Reserve. And so those particular components actually roll up to big Army and big Air Force, like we like to say. And we all get the same training. The only difference is how we're assigned and whether we are full-time or part-time. And in some cases, you have reservists that are full-time. I didn't realize that a whole lot when I was, starting in the military. Like in my first 11 years, I guess I kind of knew it a little bit, but it was like, how do you get those jobs? And, at that time it was a lot of who do you know? And, if they were willing to help you kind of come on. But when I got my start in the military, it really was an organization that took me off the streets. And so I grew up in Maryland. So I'm a born and bred Marylander. I grew up in the country, so that is a little different. So sometimes I talk to people and they say, well, they grew up in the city. And I go, well, I grew up just the opposite. I grew up in the country with not a whole lot of people. The only thing you could do is, when you wanted to be able to play, you couldn't go down to the street corner or go to the little candy store because those were like miles and miles and miles away. You would just play in the woods.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
And so that became, you learned how to occupy yourself, in many cases.
Mm.
But when I think of just my start is a little different in the sense that I worked part-time military and full-time, always a civilian job. And in many cases, I would have to say up until I was about 27, I always worked about 4 jobs.
Oh, wow.
And I don't, people, they don't talk about that, right? So I did the reserves. I worked a daytime job. And during those years, I was working in program management support. And that's how I got my start in working for the government, working government contracts. Is I was doing program management support and then moved into contracts management and then moved into systems development. I taught aerobics and I sold furniture at a furniture store. And so I worked a lot of different jobs and in many cases doing a lot of them all at one time. At one point in time, I was a security guard. So I worked a night shift and did security guard work at night. But it was all about, really trying to make ends meet. And I tried my hand very early on at a little bit of entrepreneurship, right? So I tried to sell, I joined, some of these groups, tried to sell lingerie and, I sold Avon and, those types of things. And I absolutely hated it. I'm just going to tell you.
Yeah.
It was good in terms of the thinking and it was great in terms of meeting people, but for those particular items, it was just not me. I even tried to really, and Mary Kay is like one of the most successful businesses there are. And it just didn't inspire me. Right. And so it would have been a very easy, move because the structure and everything was there, but I just couldn't make it work for myself. And so when I think about my whole career and always working for someone else. And I worked for a very large consulting company for 21 years and then, retired from the consulting company and became the adjutant general of Maryland, which was a full-time state role and still part-time National Guard. And I knew at some point that I wanted to go back and do my own business. And it wasn't because I hated what I was doing. I loved what I was doing, but I wanted to do more of what I loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like going into my own business was going to allow me to be able to focus and work with clients that I wanted to work with, and to partner with organizations that I wanted to partner with. So therefore I could pick and choose, and I could pick and choose, I'm going to go after this work, or no, I'm not going to go after this work, or, I don't really want to work in that area. I don't really, want to partner with this particular organization. And you could do, some of that, but, in many cases, when you're working with the big mammoth organizations, the bottom line is so much more stringent. You have to be able to hit targets. And so you're doing what you need to be able to hit those targets. And sometimes that means working with a client that you absolutely hate.
You can fire your client. I always tell people that all the time. You can fire your client.
So, and so I really wanted to focus differently. So I started, my business with this premise that, my motto for my company, um, is that changing the way you see the world.
Mm,
And I chose kaleidoscope effect because a kaleidoscope, when you turn it, and if you can actually see behind me, I have a kaleidoscope on my desk. So I got that when I incorporated my company. I always say that depending on which way you turn it, something beautiful happens. Therefore, I have kaleidoscope and the effect that you want to see, or the effect that you want to happen, right? So it's that change and making it happen. And that was really that's foundational. I wanted a company that's not just doing good and working for clients and obviously making money, but I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make an impact. And so I want everything that we do and we work on to be making an impact.
mm, mm. And from the military, I know you probably get this a lot, and people who are veterans, so what's the correlation between being in the military and being an entrepreneur? Were there transferable skills?
Absolutely. The leadership skills are probably the most relevant, right? So transferring those leadership skills, how do you step into the unknown? How do you step into an environment that's brand new and you've got to make something of it, right? That is core to the military. How do you build a team? Most people think that the military is all about giving orders, but it
Yeah.
is about building teams, and you
Mm,
need to know how to build influence and engage, um, eh, your team. And because if you can't do that, they will leave you down. I mean, you can think you can be the highest level person, but they will completely, leave you out there hanging as a senior leader. And I've actually seen it happen. And so you really can learn some very valuable skills. And for veterans, you need to be thinking about those skills and applying them to business,
mhm.
because there is this kind of translation, but you do have to make sure that you're doing it intentionally.
Absolutely. So when I work with entrepreneurs, especially those who are veterans, and I used to think that, oh, you're a veteran, you do government contracting. Just this past week, I kind of ran into that. Coming off of a golf tournament, I was about to leave this guy. We just had a conversation. He said he was in the Army. Of course, I said I should set this to you too, Major General. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right? And I said that to the guy, and we just had a conversation. Then he said the magic word, where is it? Here, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, oh, you're doing government contracting. And I said, Omar, you need to stop that. So all veterans are not going to get into government contracting, so government contracting, the public arena, if you will, public marketplace. Now, your focus is on a public marketplace, I'm assuming.
I do.
Private clients.
So
You do.
I
Okay.
work with private industry. I work with nonprofits.
Oh, okay.
And I will do work internationally, right? So I have some work that's been pending because of COVID. It's just
Yeah,
been
yeah,
pending, and so I will work with both. And a lot of times the focus is slightly different
yeah.
depending on what you're doing. And so when you look at my overall business, I have taken everything that I learned and did in my past and
Mhm.
brought it into my future and kind of put it into core functions. And so the core functions for my business is the general management consulting.
Mhm.
It's strategy and innovation. And most people, they look at me and they go, well, I don't really see, where do you get that strategy and innovation? And I'm like, did you look at what my whole career has been? It's all been strategy, innovation, and, looking at, how do we solve problems using technology, which has really been my whole background. The next piece is international affairs. And so that's the capacity building that, I'm really focusing in on outside of the country. And then the last piece is what I call community enablement. And community enablement is where I will do work with nonprofits. Some of it is pro bono work, some of it is in-kind services, and some of it is actually paid work. And so, believe it or not, nonprofits will hire individuals to work for them. And so, you kind of have all of those pieces, and you have to understand where you want to work and how do they all fall out. And I think for me, it was a matter of diversifying my business enough so that I can build the level of cash flow that I need to be able to hire others. And when you're doing government contracting, it's very different, and it's a little bit longer in terms of how your dollars, turn over, right? So it's a
Right.
very different model, and you have to be able to balance that.
Absolutely. So how are you able to move, so, entrepreneurs, they always focus on, not always, some of them focus on just one stream or one type of customer. You know, how do you move in and out of working with nonprofits, working with for-profits, government agencies?
Right. And I think that's the challenging piece, right? So I have targets, especially on the government side.
Yeah.
I have target clients that are the ones that I'm really trying to build those longer term relationships with. And
Hmm.
because that avenue takes a little bit longer, you have to be a little bit more patient. And so I'm able to take the time that I need to build the relationships, understand the playing field, look at, which organizations has the type of work that I'm doing. So I have my set organizations, and you need to know their business. You need to be able to understand where they contract and what are those dollars. But then for the civilian agent or the private sector organizations, you want to set targets for those, but sometimes you have to be a little bit more opportunistic, right? Because you don't always see kind of the projections that you'll see on the government side at that federal and state level, those projections. And so you have to be a little bit more opportunistic, and you have to actually do some outreach. And so some of, the work that I've done that's helped me to engage with these organizations has been something like a keynote speaker. I'll go in and do a big keynote for them on a critical day. And that then starts me to start making relationships in their organizations, because, sometimes, I had one organization, they were like, we want you to come in and fly in for a keynote for our African American interest group. And we want you to stay, and we're going to be doing a dinner cruise. Will you stay and engage with our executives? And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're allowing me to engage with 150
Yes.
of your executives.
Yes.
Are you? Absolutely, I'll stay.
Right.
Because you don't often get that. So you have to kind of, make sure that you're understanding, how you're going to do that. And it's opportunistic. And, the work on the community enablement,
Hmm.
I was really, looking at boards and commissions, and, serving on not just nonprofit boards, but serving on private or public company boards. So I'm on a public company board. But what I started seeing creep up in my request was this work with nonprofits.
Mm.
And so I've just tried to segment that so that I will actually go in and do pro bono work for certain nonprofits. And then I will bid on work with
Mm.
other nonprofits to be able to do more strategic things with them, right? So if I'm doing their strategic plan, that takes a lot more time. If I'm going in and building a learning model or a workforce model, it takes a lot more time. And I, will actually bid on work to do that.
Mm.
Because there's there's a lot of benefit, but there's a lot to be said about this whole thing of diversification of your financial aspects of your business.
Right. I love that. All right. So I'm gonna ask you. I think it's a fun question, but you may not think it's a fun question. All right. So what's more challenging, being in the military, being an entrepreneur, or working for corporate?
Oh my God. Oh wow. They're all very different, but I would have to say being an entrepreneur is more challenging,
Yeah.
because every single day I get up, I'm thinking about, okay, what's on my plate for today? And I'm moving from a solopreneur to, starting to expand. And so this is a growth year for me. And that's tough, right? So I've been doing it with partners, but trying to get that longevity. So you're thinking about this every single day. And it wasn't, when I was in the corporate environment, I thought about it every single day in terms of my sales, in terms of those things, but I had the big machine backing me up.
Yeah.
And when I say the big machine, I had all the resources. When you are an entrepreneur, if you're just starting out, it is, me, myself, and I, right? So it's
Right.
just you, and you are everything to yourself. I will tell you that, for all of so if any of my folks that who worked for me and worked in my office in the military in the last 5 years when I was the adjutant general. So for any of you that were my aides or my personal assistants, I'm just going to apologize now because I am the first assistant to myself. I
Yes.
missed
Yes.
but I think it's different, but it's definitely harder because you have to be in the game every single day. And do I get a chance to, be able to have some time to myself? Of course, but I'm thinking about my business constantly.
So you mentioned that this is a growth year for you, kind of tuned into that. So right now you're a solo entrepreneur. How are you looking at it from a growth perspective? I mean, what resources are you working with to kind of move you forward?
Well, so that's important because one, I'm looking at my strategic partnerships and really formulating who are the organizations that I so want to do business with, right? And I do have a target, and so when you think about my organization, my target, and it doesn't mean that I won't partner with any other organization, but my target is women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. Those are my top line priorities, and mainly because if I grow, they grow. And I find that they're more partnerial, and that we want to help one another. And so I'm really focusing in and building some of those partnerships and having strategic alliances that I can
Mm.
work with and call upon to help me start doing that growth. The second piece is looking and being very intentional about where I want to bring on resources. And I originally, started and saying, I want my first hire to be in those same categories, right? I want my first hire outside of myself that's a permanent employee, not, someone that's coming on and doing, part-time work for me or 1099 work or whatever, because I've had interns and I've had, 1099 folks, but I'm talking, I want my first set outside of my family that works in the business with me. I want that to be in those categories as well. It's important to me to try to figure out how do I help to give back, and how do I help make a difference on those economic problems that we have. And in some cases that means lending a hand to someone where I'm going to bring them in and they may not have all the necessary skills, but they can work in my business for me to build them and to help them to get to that next level, help enable them to where they become a little more self-sufficient.
Absolutely. And strategic partners, and sometimes entrepreneurs tend to look at their competition or people that may be like them as, I don't want to do business with them. In essence, it could be a way that you all can work together to become bigger. If you look at the big corporations, that's what they do. They got more money than we do, but I mean, they're working together. They're forming those alliances, if you will.
Yeah, and so there's this thing, and this is something that I learned, working in big, and for the biggies,
Yes.
is that there are times in which you strategically partner
Yeah.
to go after work, and there are times in which you're going to be competitors.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that they're bad people. That just means that you just need to know what land you're in
Yeah.
at the different times.
Right.
And you could be a competitor and a partner with the same organization across 3 different things, right? You could see that happen. And so you have to kind of take it away from a competitor is all bad. You just need to know your space.
That's
A competitor can end up being an alliance and a very strong partner for other types of things if you decide to go after that. So just be very strategic in how you do that.
absolutely. All right. So what advice would you give to other women veteran entrepreneurs?
The first thing I would say is know what you're passionate about. Your business should be focused on something that you're passionate about. If you're going to have to wake up and do it every single day, and if you wake up and say, oh my God, I hate this, then you're in the wrong business and you're not going to be successful,
Yeah.
and you're going to hate it and hate it and hate it. So make sure that if you're going to go into your own business, it has to be something that you're passionate about. And it also has to be something that you're going to make money in, right? So if your goal is to be self-sufficient, financially free, then you want to make sure that you know how to package it, how to commoditize it, to be able to make it into something that's going to make money for you.
Absolutely. You got to make money.
I
Yeah,
mean, even a nonprofit has to make money because you
absolutely.
can't do the things that you want to be able to do to help the community if you're not bringing in or raising the money or however it is. You still have to be able to do that.
You have to pay yourself a salary too.
Yes,
You have to find a way to pay yourself a salary.
you do, and that is key, right? And I know that we put in. I was actually talking with another gentleman. He's not a veteran, but one of my he's a board member on the Easter Seals board with me, and he started several businesses, and he sold his business a number of years ago, and he now has another business. And what him and I were having a conversation about was, he's now at this point that he started another business, and he's just like, is this really the direction that I wanted to go with it? And so I think he's even re-questioning the direction that he wanted to take the business, which was refreshing for me. It
Mm-hmm.
was refreshing for me to hear someone who was very, very successful in a number of businesses kind of questioning and saying, well, I think I might want to do this one differently.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and sometimes we think entrepreneur is just straight line, but entrepreneurship, you'll figure out that, oh, I need to pivot. I mean, look at last year. A lot of businesses have to pivot, so there are going to be some times where you have to figure out, okay, this one is not working, so maybe I can try something else in the business. So yeah, that's good to hear and good resource to have as well.
Yes,
Right. All
absolutely.
right. So we're going to end here. So I do want to let people know, next week, like I said earlier, we'll have a woman veteran entrepreneur of color on. We'll interview just like we did with Major General Linda Singh. And we'll also have an opportunity to end with a resource that will provide some or individual organization that will provide some additional resources. So next week we'll learn more about the Women Platform. Um, that's at Morgan State University and sponsored by the Truist Bank as well. So you'll learn more about that, and we'll interview another entrepreneur as well. So the goal is to really have these come out on a regular basis, at least once a month, so that you can get the resources to help build your capacity. So with that said, don't forget we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at WVE Podcast, Women Veteran Entrepreneurs. So WVE Podcast, you can find us there. You can also find past upcoming episodes, I should say, at EDAC Morgan. That's EDAC Morgan, all one word.com. So thank you for tuning in. Until next time, continue making a statement with capacity building. We'll see you next time. Take care.